Story number 1. The Graveyard Shift. You take the job at the gas station because you have no other choice. It's the only place hiring in your small, dead-end town. The manager, a man named Carl, seems friendly enough when he interviews you, though his smile never quite reaches his tired, bloodshot eyes. "You'll be on the graveyard shift," he says, sliding a clipboard toward you to sign the paperwork. "It's mostly quiet, but there are a few things you'll need to know." He hands you a laminated sheet with a list of instructions. At first glance, it seems standard. Lock the cash register at the end of the shift. Restock the shelves if you get a chance. But the bottom half catches your eye. If someone knocks on the door after midnight, don't let them in, no matter what they say. If the security cameras go dark, hide behind the counter until they come back on. At 3 a.m. exactly, you might hear footsteps in the back room. Do not investigate. Stay at the counter until they stop. If a man with no face comes inside, pretend you don't see him. You laugh nervously and look at Carl, expecting some kind of explanation, but he only shrugs. Don't think about it too hard. Just follow the rules, and you'll be fine. It feels like a joke, some initiation hazing for the new hire, so you nod and tell him you'll do your best. He gives you the keys and leaves with a wave, his car disappearing into the darkness. The gas station is lonely at night. The harsh fluorescent lights buzz overhead, casting cold shadows across the aisles stocked with stale snacks and cheap drinks. Outside, the highway is mostly empty, the occasional car whooshing past and disappearing into the void. You pass the first few hours easily enough, organizing shelves and flipping through a tattered magazine at the counter. At midnight, the first knock comes. It's soft at first, almost polite. You glance up and see a man standing outside, his face obscured by the shadow of his hoodie. He waves at you, gesturing toward the door, and your first instinct is to help. But then you remember the list. Don't let them in, no matter what they say. You shake your head at him through the glass, mouthing, "We're closed." The man doesn't move for a moment, then steps closer, pressing his hand flat against the door. "Please," he says, his voice muffled. "My car broke down. I just need to use your phone." You hesitate. His tone is desperate, and you feel a pang of guilt. But something about the way he's standing, too stiff, too still, sets your nerves on edge. "I can't help you," you say firmly, louder this time. The man doesn't respond. Instead, he leans his forehead against the glass, his breath fogging up the surface. For a moment, you think he's going to break the door down, but then he steps back, his face still hidden, and walks away into the night. You try to shake it off, telling yourself it's just some drifter, but the unease lingers. At 1:30 a.m., the security monitors flicker. You glance up from your magazine to see the screens go black, one by one, until all 6 are dark. Your stomach knots as you remember the second rule. Hide behind the counter until they come back on. Heart pounding, you duck down, crouching beneath the counter. The silence is oppressive, broken only by the hum of the freezers. Minutes stretch into eternity as you sit there, every nerve in your body on high alert. Then you hear it, a faint tapping sound like nails on glass. Slowly, you peek over the edge of the counter. The front windows are empty. The sound isn't coming from there. It's coming from the security monitors. The black screens shimmer faintly as though something is moving just beneath the surface. The tapping grows louder, more insistent, and you clamp your hands over your ears, squeezing your eyes shut. Suddenly, the monitors flicker back on, the static resolving into the familiar, grainy footage of the store. Nothing is out of place. But when you stand up, you see that all the shelves in the far aisle have been rearranged. At 3 a.m., the footsteps begin. It starts as a faint creak, like someone shifting their weight in the back room. You freeze, your eyes darting toward the door behind the counter. The sound grows louder, more deliberate, like boots on the linoleum floor. You want to check to prove to yourself that it's just your imagination. But the rule is clear: do not investigate. You stay rooted to the spot, gripping the edge of the counter so tightly your knuckles turn white. The footsteps circle the back room, pausing occasionally as though whoever, or whatever, is back there is listening. After what feels like hours, the sound stops. You let out a shaky breath, your body trembling with tension. The last customer arrives at 4:15 a.m. At first, you don't notice him enter. He moves so quietly that you only realize he's there when you see him standing at the far end of the counter. He's tall, dressed in a plain black suit, and his face isn't there. There are no eyes, no mouth, no features at all, just smooth, blank skin. You swallow hard, the air caught in your throat, and look down at the counter pretending to study the magazine. He doesn't move, doesn't speak, but you can feel him watching you somehow. Your hands shake as you flip the page, though you aren't reading a word. After several agonizing minutes, he walks away, disappearing into one of the aisles. You don't dare look up. You don't hear him leave, but when you finally glance around the store, he's gone. The sky is starting to lighten when Carl arrives at 5 a.m. He looks you over, his expression unreadable, and then nods. "You made it," he says simply, as though it's nothing. You want to quit, to throw the keys at him and walk out, but something stops you. Maybe it's the fatigue, or maybe it's the strange pull this place seems to have over you. Instead, you nod back, silently accepting the next shift. Carl smiles faintly, his eyes glinting with something you can't quite place. "Welcome to the team," he says. As you leave, the laminated sheet of rules slips from your pocket. You stoop to pick it up, and that's when you notice something scrawled at the bottom that wasn't there before. Rule number 5, you can never leave. Story number 2, the call center. You don't question why the job was so easy to land. The interviewer barely glanced at your resume before handing you a headset and ushering you to a cubicle. "Just answer the calls," she said, her voice clipped and devoid of emotion. "Stick to the script no matter what. And remember, never hang up first." The instructions felt simple enough, and with bills piling up, you weren't about to complain about details. The call center itself is sterile and cold. Rows of identical gray cubicles stretching endlessly under the flickering fluorescent lights. It doesn't help that the office feels deserted. No coworkers, no background chatter, only the soft hum of the air conditioning. You wonder if you're the only one working tonight, but your manager disappears before you can ask. The first call comes in almost immediately. The screen on your computer doesn't display a number, just a blinking red light. You press the button to answer. "Thank you for calling. This is Alex speaking. How can I help you?" There's silence on the other end. Then a faint, raspy voice whispers, "Do you know what time it is?" Confused, you glance at the clock on the wall. "It's 9:15 p.m., you reply, though something about the question unsettles you. The line goes dead, and you frown at the phone. Strange, but maybe it was just a prank. The second call comes 10 minutes later. This time, the voice is clearer, a woman speaking rapidly. "I'm trapped. Please, you have to help me. It's dark, and I can't find the door. I think something's in here with me." Your stomach tightens. "I'm sorry, ma'am," you say, fumbling with the script. "But can I get your account number so I can assist you?" "No, just listen. Please, it's..." Her voice cuts off abruptly, replaced by static. You stare at the phone in your hand, your pulse pounding in your ears. The calls keep coming. Each one is worse than the last. A child sobbing, asking why their parents won't wake up. A man breathing heavily, muttering numbers that don't make sense. A deep, guttural growl that you can feel vibrating through the headset. You try to tell yourself it's just some elaborate prank, but the fear in their voices feels too real. Around midnight, the phone rings again, and you answer automatically. "Thank you for calling. This is Alex speaking. How can I help you?" A long pause. Then your own voice answers back. "Why are you still here?" You freeze, staring at the computer screen as static buzzes in your ear. "Who is this, Yasiri?" you demand, your voice shaking. The voice on the other end mimics your laugh perfectly, then whispers, "You shouldn't have taken this job." The line goes dead. The silence that follows is deafening. You rip off the headset and look around, half expecting someone to step out from behind the rows of cubicles and yell, "Gotcha!" But the office is empty. The clock on the wall ticks louder than it should, the second hand moving in jerky, uneven steps. And then the phone rings again. You don't want to answer it, but your manager's instructions echo in your head. Never hang up first. With trembling hands, you pick up the receiver. This time, there's no voice, only breathing, slow and heavy. It's coming from behind you. Your blood runs cold as you slowly turn your chair. The office is still empty, but the faint reflection in your computer screen shows a shadow standing just behind you. The phone slips from your hand. When you turn back to the computer, the screen displays a single message. Your shift ends when we say it does. You don't remember leaving the building. You don't remember how you got home. But as you lie in bed that night, the phone on your nightstand rings, the same shrill tone that's now seared into your mind. And this time, there's no way to hang up. Story number 3. The Night Cleaner. You take the job out of sheer desperation. It's advertised as night cleaner needed, no experience required. The pay is oddly high for janitorial work, but you convince yourself it's because the hours are inconvenient. The address leads you to an old office building on the edge of town, looming and silent under the weak glow of a flickering streetlight. The manager, a pale, wiry man named Mr. Klein, barely looks at you as he hands you a set of keys and a cleaning cart. "Just the top floor tonight," he says curtly. "Stick to the checklist and finish before sunrise. And one more thing, don't look in any mirrors." His words hang in the air like a bad joke, but the cold weight in his voice makes you nod in uneasy agreement. The building feels alive as you step into the elevator, its walls humming faintly with a low vibration. The top floor is pristine at first glance, with polished floors and glass-walled offices. The smell of lemon cleaner lingers faintly, but there's something underneath it, a faint, acrid scent that makes your nose itch. You begin the checklist, wiping down surfaces and emptying trash bins. Everything is eerily quiet except for the occasional pop of fluorescent lights overhead. You're halfway through the first office when you catch a flicker of movement in the corner of your eye. Turning quickly, you see nothing, just the reflection of the room in the large window. You shake it off and return to work, chalking it up to nerves, but it keeps happening. In every office you clean, the reflections seem wrong. The angles are slightly off, like the glass is bending reality in subtle ways. In one window, you notice your reflection still scrubbing, long after you've stopped. In another, the reflection of an empty chair shows it occupied by a figure you don't dare look at directly. The checklist becomes a lifeline as your anxiety builds, each task completed bringing you closer to escape. Then you see it, a mirror in the hallway, cracked and dusty but unmistakably there. You curse under your breath. You've been careful to avoid mirrors, just like Klein said, but this one wasn't on your route before. It seems impossible to ignore, drawing your gaze despite the panic clawing at your chest. Against your better judgment, you look. At first, it's just your face staring back, pale and tense under the harsh overhead lights. But then, your reflection smiles, a slow, deliberate grin that twists your stomach into knots. You step back, but the reflection doesn't move. Instead, it tilts its head, studying you like a predator sizing up prey. And then it steps forward, out of the mirror. You run, abandoning the cart and checklist, your heart pounding as you race for the elevator. The air around you grows colder with each step, and shadows seem to lengthen, reaching for you. The elevator doors open just as you hear the soft patter of footsteps behind you. You don't look back. When you reach the lobby, Mr. Klein is waiting. He looks up from his clipboard, unfazed by your panicked state. "I told you not to look," he says flatly. Behind him, the mirrors lining the walls ripple like water, and you realize your reflection is missing. "You'll have to finish your shift tomorrow," Klein continues, his tone matter of fact. "If you make it through, we'll talk about a raise." You don't reply. You can't. As you leave, the glass doors reflect only the empty lobby, but you swear you feel eyes on your back all the way home.